What do you make of these findings? I expected to get maybe a greater portion of GBNews viewers supporting that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought the support would be higher. That's certainly the feeling you get whilst looking at social media, whilst reading newspapers. You believe that the public want this to go ahead. So it's quite surprising, actually, that the support isn't there. I do wonder if people are now seeing that the government has promised this for so long and nothing has happened, that it isn't likely to happen. It's not going to get off the ground. And so the support is moving away from it. But I really did think it would be much higher, perhaps up into 60–70%.
I think the reality is, as you've laid out there, Claire, there was a plan. People thought, OK, well, let's try it. It seems like the legal red tape to actually literally get this off the ground is so long-winded that people are thinking, well, we need a solution faster than that.
Well, that's right. And the problem is the government went into this to launch something. They believed they had to do something, and this was what they grasped on. And when it was released, it was around the time of local elections, if we think back to earlier this year. And it was launched to sort of great fanfare, but I don't think the detail was ever drilled down behind it. So it sounded very good. It sounded like an option. But when you started to look at the practicalities of doing it, it just fell apart. And I can't see, like Martin has just said, I can't actually see any planes taking off and this happening. And even if they do, Rwanda currently only has the capacity to take 200 people. Now, that could increase in the future, but we're paying out an awful lot of money and taking people in return for pretty much nothing at the moment.
I think, Claire, one of the big points of resistance to this, amongst even those who are supportive in principle, is the cost. So it's £140 million so far, with 0 deportations. Do you think the gloss is wearing off? The reality is starting to shine through. This is expensive and it's unworkable.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is an awful lot of money. And plus, as I said, you need to take people in return. We are taking some of the most vulnerable from Rwanda back into this country. So there will be an associated cost with that as well. So it is very expensive. And currently there is no airline willing to remove those people over to Rwanda for processing. So I think that the government needs to really think, if they are so wedded to this, it has to work. But you can't keep throwing good money after bad.
And a key point there, Claire, you brought up, because the global standard on this is the Australian Stop the Boats model, Operation Sovereign Waters. But the key difference there was that the Australian Navy was the carrier who took the asylum seekers to Papua New Guinea. But you just hit on a key point. No airline is even prepared to sign up for this because it would wreck their reputation, wouldn't it?
But that's right. And if you don't have that, if you don't have those airlines willing to do it, you can't even charter a private airline, which would cost you a lot of money. But even they don't want to be involved. Then I don't see how this is going to work. And it doesn't matter which country you're talking about, whether you look to put them into South America or different parts of Africa. If you don't have that method of transportation, it isn't going to happen. And removals flights have always been dogged with this problem. And those airlines really do want to protect their reputation, as any business would. So if they see that there's any kind of legal challenge, then they aren't going to do it. It was a little bit different with Australia, but also let's not forget that the Australian government have had to pay out an awful lot in compensation for keeping people illegally detained and the treatment of them within that facility.
Claire, let's move on to some other information in the poll, if we can. And sort of the most stark thing, 57% of the public who were polled said nothing in Britain works anymore. That is a very sweeping statement. Are you surprised that it was that high, 57%?
To be honest, no. Anybody who has tried to use a train within the last week will probably think that Britain is more broken than anything else. And then we've seen the state of hospitals and GP surgeries and ambulance strikes. So no, it doesn't surprise me at all. It feels at the moment as if everything has just ground to a halt. I was waiting for a couple of trains which were cancelled at the last minute for no absolute reason at all. And it's really, really frustrating. And it wasn't even a strike day. It was just a day. So I can understand why people feel that. And I don't think that's going to get any better with the strikes continuing long into the new year.
I think 57% is being charitable. I spoke to my dad last night. He said, nothing works anymore, son. What's the blooming point? I think that is becoming a key point. Something else in this poll could we talk about is the most competent Prime Minister. We've had 3 Prime Ministers in a year. Now, 3 wise men. We've had 3 of these lot. Boris Johnson came in top. Does that surprise you? I mean, do the Tories want a Boris return? Is he their last-ditch attempt to save their party?
The one thing you can say about Boris Johnson is he was a big personality, and on a campaigning front, he was excellent. I may not agree with him, but you cannot fault the way that he goes out there and people want to see him, they want to hear him speak, and he is very, very good. What he wasn't very good at was the detailed part of running a government and running a country. But if you put that to one side, politics is all about personality, and he had it by the bucket load. And that's what people wanted. People will always remember him for that. Unfortunately, the disasters that surrounded him overtook it. But I think if you can almost make a Frankenstein's monster of prime ministers, the majority of that personality comes from him.
So, obviously, Rishi Sunak takes us into the new year, a significant set of challenges, not only that he inherited, but also many that have really got worse as the time he's been Prime Minister, particularly when it comes to strikes. How has he fared so far in your mind, and do you think he's going to be able to tackle things like inflation, strike action in the new year?
This is a really difficult one because I don't think we've particularly seen much of him in action. If you're talking about previous prime ministers, they have been out on the media reassuring the public that something was going to happen. But Rishi Sunak has taken a slightly quieter approach to it and is getting on in the background. I don't always think that's a good idea. I think people want to see the kind of person that they're dealing with and they want to feel reassured. And as Martin's dad was a prime example, everything's broken, why do we bother? That's the point, that your prime minister needs to be out there stating what it is that's going on, how they're trying to make this better. Even if the news is bad, you would much rather see somebody out there talking about it than hiding away behind a desk. So I think he needs that kind of media operation to ramp up in the new year to reassure people that he is actually doing the job, because at the moment he's very, very quiet.